Hello, hi everyone. My name is Stella Wedera, and I am the team lead of Africa STEM Summit. This is a 3-day summit curated to inspire, to mentor, to guide, to expose individuals to technical skills they will need at every level of their career journey, from junior to intermediate to senior level. The goal of this summit is to bridge the skills and gender gap in STEM. And for those who do not know what STEM means, it's sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics in full. So we have attached the speaker LinkedIn profile in the chat section. Feel free to go ahead and follow the speaker, connect with them, and interact with them beyond the summit. Also, you can continue with the conversation even after this event or during the event or during the session at using the hashtag Africa STEM Summit and at African STEM Summit. So, who is our speaker today? Our speaker is Kevin Kipchumba, who is a full stack developer and is also a computer science instructor, especially in the software engineering field. Kevin is going to take us through JWT authorization and authentication in Django. So without much further ado, I will hand over to Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Stella.
Take over kindly. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Stella. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kelvin Kipchumba. I'm an instructor in software engineering, be it Django, Ruby, React, and all that. I've been there for the last almost 3 years, let's say 3 to 4, 5 years. But I've been doing this coding for some time now. So welcome to this session. I'm hoping the session will be very interactive. Yes, and also I'm also requesting uh, you guys to bear with me. I can say that. Because you can't see me today. Yes, I'm currently using my desktop, so that's actually the reason why you can't see me. Okay. Yes. So today we are going to do authentication and authorization in Django, and these will be using REST framework and also Simple JWT. Yes. So before we start, we can define what is authentication and what is authorization. Okay. So remember, authentication is different from authorization, right? Yes. So actually, authentication is the process of verifying that you are who you say you are, right? Yes. I can say I'm Kelvin, and then I can say I'm Kelvin, but you cannot verify that I'm Kelvin unless I actually hand you my ID, and then you can verify using the picture that is in my ID. That is when you can now verify that I'm Kelvin, right? Um, so what about authorization? Authorization again is actually almost the process of verifying what a specific resource or even an application or file or even the data as a user has access to. Yes. So remember, when you want to access something, we have to confirm first that you are allowed to access that file, right? That's why when you log in somewhere, if you are a normal user, you have some limitations, but the admin of that system has more access to more stuff, right? Yes. So and most of the time, authentication go hand in hand with authorization. The moment you log in, for example, while let's say when you go to let's say when you log into Facebook, right? When you log into Facebook, the moment you log in, you have access to your own post. You can edit all your posts and all that, right? So that is what we call authentication. But the moment you log in, that is after being authenticated, now you have access to your stuff. It can be your files and all other stuff that is allowed for the public, any resource. For example, everyone's post, everyone can see it, but when it comes to your profile, it is your own, it is private to you alone, right? Yes, so having said that, today we'll be using Django, as I've said, and I'll assume that maybe somebody has Python already, and maybe PPNV, right? Someone might not be using PPNV because PPNV actually we use it to manage uh, to create the virtual environment, right? So we use this PPNV to manage the virtual environment, and it is the lighter one, unlike the other one. All right. So I'll assume that these two someone asked. I will also be using my laptop is Linux. My laptop OS is Linux. So um, I will assume um, that that these two somebody asked them, right? For someone who wants to install it, we have a command for installing it here. All right. Yes. So what are our objectives today? Okay. And what will we be using? So we'll be using Django REST framework, Django authentication with the JWT, and then we'll now go to user authorization. So we'll first learn Django REST framework, that is setting up Kidogo the application, and then we go ahead and do the authentication with the JWT, and then we can now go ahead and do authorization, right? Yeah. So having said that, again, I will go to what we will do now, right? I mean, what kind of small kind of application will we be building for the whole of this session? Because of time, so we'll be doing a simple kind of application, so long as we'll be having authentication. So I'll be having a user, and then I'll create a user, and maybe let's say I'm creating some kind of a task list application, something like that. So task list application is an application where you can log in, and then you can add your own tasks. All right. So so that means creating your user account and logging in. When you log in now, that will be authentication, right? You'll receive a token, and then we use that token now to authorize the user to perform some other functionalities. For example, adding a task and even fetching the task. Because remember, a task belongs to a specific user, right? It doesn't belong to all users. So it is a task list, a kind of application where I log in, I add my own tasks and all that. But remember, we are only building it as from the backend point of view. We are not connecting it with any front end. All right. Yeah. So we will be using, as I said, so we'll be using our VS Code and also Postman, or what we call Tada client, to test our API endpoints. All right. So I was saying we have the user, and then we can also have the tasks. So having these two, we'll be ready to go. Again, when it comes to user, I'll be using also what we call custom authentication. Authentication. And the reason why I like using custom authentication is because um, Python always provides us with a user, a ready-made user. When you create an application with Django, even without doing anything, and then you run the migration, you'll realize that you have a user table, right? Yeah, so that comes with its own disadvantages. One of the disadvantages is that you might not be able, you can add, but it becomes more complex to add more fields in that model. So the easiest way to do is create your own custom model that is for the user, and then you can add anything that you want to do, anything that you want to add. So remember that one, you'll be using the custom custom model, right? Okay, so having said all that, let me just close all this. All these, yes, I wanted to close that. And then I now start setting up my application, right? Yes, so Stella, in case someone has a question, you just shoot me up. Yes, maybe someone has a question somewhere. Just tell me, right? Okay, so what I will do now, I will start setting up my application. So I'll go to REST framework, Django, which is this one. That is one. I will also open what we call Django official documentation. Yes. And then we also need what we call JWT Django, right? Yes. So we have all this. We have all of them, and we need actually all of them when we are doing this. So we are starting fast with the Django documentation when creating our application. All right. So I'll go back to my Django documentation, and then I can now look for the version that I want to use. It depends on you. You can decide, but 3.2 is stable, 4.2 is stable, right? So I always recommend 3.2 or 4.2. So I'll go to 4.2 myself. And then what I will do here, I will follow all this. I'll go to documentation. That is documentation. And then now you can now follow with what you want, right? You go to where you have get started, right? Let me just zoom in. Get started a little bit, and then you can now go to where you have write your first Django app part 1, right? So this is a command for creating your Django project, all right? So what I will do, I will close maybe this windows. I'll go back to my files, and then I will I'll open this one with my, I just want to open this one with my terminal. Where is my terminal? Okay, I now have my terminal. And then I'll go to my terminal now, and then I paste this command. So remember, this is the command, and then this one is your project name. So this one is Django admin start project, and then you pass your project name. So I'll just copy this one. And then I'll paste it here. And then I pass the project name, right? So my project name, I can pass it as backend, or you can pass it as anything, right? I'll paste that. So now my project has been created here. Here it is, which is a Django project. And I will now open a new window for VS Code, and I will drag this here. Yes, so now my project is ready. But remember, after creating, let me just zoom in a little bit. After creating your backend application, that is my app now, I need first of all to set up what we call virtual environment, all right? Somebody will say, I can do it without virtual environment. That one is okay. But remember, your application will not be portable, right? It will not be portable because if you want to maybe give somebody your application, someone will not be able to even install the packages. You will have to restart it again. So using this virtual environment, it will enable you to have your packages combined, I can say that, especially when you want to deploy your application and all that. So that is why it is very important to install packages in an virtual environment, right? So what I will do first, I will create my virtual environment, okay, and I will be using what we call pip env. It is it is a good it's a good way to manage your environment. So I will now install it. So I'll say personally I've installed pip env. So I'll just install it for it to generate the files here. All right. So I'll say pip env, and then I'll say install. So it will generate these files. You see, you generate these two files. One which will list your packages, and then this one it will be managing the versions. All right. If you can check here, you have all these. We have Python version 3.8 and all that. Here it will have the packages. All right. So the first package that I need is the Django package. But before I do that, I need to activate my virtual environment. How can I activate my virtual environment? So by using ppnv, we use what we call pip env shell, right? Ppnv shell, and then let me just clear my terminal. So you can see now, for you to confirm that you are actually in a virtual environment, you can confirm it by the same name like your application name written in brackets. All right. So you can see it is written in brackets. If I want to exit my environment like this, you'll realize that it is no longer there. So that is when you should know how to activate, okay, and now to deactivate your environment. To activate it, you use ppnv shell, right? To deactivate it, you use exit, so it will just exit from the environment. So now that I have my environment set up like this, I will now install Django. So I'll say pip env install, and then Django, and then I will equate to the version that I want to install. So it depends on you. If you just install Django, it will install maybe latest version of Django, okay, but it will allow you to use any version. But I would like to install it a specific version. I would like to install it in a specific version of Django. So I will say ppnv install Django, and then I pass my version, which is 4.2. So it will install Django. So here you can see it as it installs it. So it is now installed. So I will clear my terminal. All right. I'll clear my terminal, and then I'll go ahead now and run my server first to confirm that my application is actually working. All right. So the command for starting your application is Python 3. Remember that, Python 3, because of the versions. We've installed now Python. We are at version 3.9 or 4, somewhere there. So we are at version 3. So you need to use 3. If I install it as Python, it will not be able to find it because I'm using version Python 3 point something, right? So I'll say Python 3 manage.py, and then I'll say run server. So these are commands to start your server, right? So after running like this, you will realize that it will give you a development server like this one. And then when I open this, you'll realize that we have our application here. All right. So this is the actual basic application, which is our project, our main one, which is our project, which is showing us that we are actually going in the right way. All right. Yes. So after doing this now, let's go and continue with our documentation. So we started our project, right? Somebody saying, just new to Python, how do I have to push the virtual environment folder to Git? So you are not actually pushing, virtual environment, all right? If you can see my my backend application, if I want to push this one now, I will just push it the way it is. You don't have to push the virtual environment itself. You just push it the way it is. But now, if another person clones it, all right? After cloning it, you will have to run pip-env install to install the packages that you already have it here. All right? Yes, so that's actually what you need to do. You don't need to worry about that. You need to push only the virtual environment. You are pushing all your application. It will go with pip file and pip file log, and then the other user who will clone your application will be able to install your packages by just cloning it, and then ppnv install. It will install any package that you actually installed here. So that one is as simple as that. All right. I was just answering Simon there. Now that we have this, we are proceeding with our documentation here. So we've created our application here like this. After doing that, we went ahead. We have our project folder, right? Which is this folder structure. We have the backend, they need ASGI and settings and all that. So we have a simple explanation that we have here. Of course, this that is our backend, which is this name, which is the main name, which is backend, is actually the root directory of your project. All right. Remember, we have a project and then we have an app inside that project. So that's why we are saying root directory, which is it is a container for your project. And then we have manage.py, which is a command line utility. So if you realized what I did use Python manage.py run server, right? So it is not manage.py is not something that I got it from nowhere. It is this file that we have it here, right? So we use it to run our commands, all right? So we have, for example, this one Python 3 manage.py run server. We have another one where you do make migrations and all that. So we use it as a utility that lets you interact with the Django project in various ways. That is manage.py. We have the init, all right? We have the init. And inside the init, this is where this is an empty file that tells Python that this is a directory. You see this init inside the backend folder? Yes, it is actually telling Python that anything that we have here, we take it as a package. All right. And then we have ASGI, WSGI. So ASGI is an entry point for web servers. And then we have WSGI. So if you can check this one, we have WSGI here, and then we have ASGI. So most of the time, if you are dealing with a chat application, we can deal with ASGI.py. All right. But for now, we are dealing with WSGI. But you don't have to worry because all that kind of configuration are already set up for you inside the settings.py. So talking about the settings now again, this is where you can find all your configurations. All right. So when you realize, when you check the WSGI, you will not be touching it. Most of the time, you might not be able to touch it. All right. So when you check the settings where we have all our configurations, we have the allowed host, the debug, which is true. So for example, the debug is actually used for, we use the debug to ensure that we get the actual errors from either the browser or even our terminal. What do I mean? Sometimes you get an error, but if you actually want to see some little explanation of that error, you can turn this one to be true. So I leave it the way it is. We also have installed apps. So this is where you can also configure your applications. We have the middleware here. And then we have all these templates and then WSGI. This is what I was talking about. But remember, you are not touching this one at all. And then you have the database. You see this database? Remember, database, we need to have somewhere to store our data, right? So this is where you configure where you want your data to be stored. But for me, I will keep it as SQLite 3, right? I'll just leave it the way it is configured. Another person can decide to use not to use SQL3, to use maybe Postgres and all that. So about that, it is up to you to decide, right? And then we have the validators there and all these languages, the time zone. You can decide to change it to East Africa, and then the static URL when you want to add some files, and then we are good to go. So this one is autofill. Remember, when you are dealing with your database, you need to have an ID which is auto-incremented, right? When you're dealing with the database, when you're inserting data to your database, remember the data that is received in the database will be auto-incremented. The first person to be registered will be ID of 1. The next person will have an ID of 2. Another person will have an ID of 3. Another person ID of 4, and then continue until a million, a billion, and all that. All right? Yes, so that's just about the folder structure. So talking about pip file, I think I've talked about that for environment. Yes, so now that we've created our application, we've tested that it is actually running. Okay. Here, this one is actually running the way you see. It is even showing us that it is Django 4.2. We can now proceed with other steps as we go. All right. Yes. If you have any question, by the way, you pass it through the chat. All right. So I will now proceed with the next, which is creating our application now. All right. Remember, we created our project. So remember, inside our project, you can have many applications inside your project. Right? Yes. So somebody will ask you, what is the difference between a project and apps? Right? What is the difference between projects and apps? What is the difference? Okay. Yes. So actually, an app is a web application that does something. Okay. That is an app. For example, for me, I want to create a task list system. So that one is our application. Okay. But now, talking about the project is a whole web system, right? Yes, it's a collection of multiple applications. In short, a collection of multiple applications is what we call a project, all right? So that's the simple terms. So now that I have the main, that is our project here, I need to create an app, all right? Yes, so how can you create an app? We also have commands here. We have a command to create an app, which is Python 3 for now, manage.py, start app, and then now I'll create it as task. I can call it task list or anything. So let me copy that, and then I'll go back to my application. Because I don't want to interrupt this page, I will open a new terminal, all right? And then I will now, first of all, activate my virtual environment because I want to install something. So I will say pip env shell, like that. And then now let me clear my terminal. And then I will say Python 3, this Python 3, manage.py, start up, I will call it task lister, like that, right? So now you will see it has generated a new folder here. So you can have as many applications as possible in your application. I want you to note that, right? You can have as many applications as possible in your application. So it is upon you to decide, especially if you have a very big application. I will always encourage you, right? I will always encourage you to subdivide your application in as many terms as possible, right? Yes. So after doing this, so now that I have a task list here, you need now to set up your application. So first of all, after creating your application, you need to do one thing. Okay. After creating your app, you need first to go to your main project, and then go to settings, and then you need to add your app in among the installed apps. All right, you need to add it here. So I'll come to this part, and then I'll pass a comma, and then I'll now add my application. My application is known as task lista, right? Yes, I'll say task lista like that. So now my application has been added into the application, into the main project. So now at this point, you are actually very ready to start working on this project. But now, if you can realize here, we have what we call urls.py. All right. So remember, this URL is the main URLs. If you can check here, you realize that we have path, which is admin, and then we have the URLs here. So first of all, what you need to do in your task list application, you need actually to create, what do you call it? You need to create a URL for our task list application. Okay, when I say URL, I'm talking about a way where when you'll be accessing, if it is a user, you'll have to pass a simple URL. This one is a URL, right? Universal resource locator. So if I want to access a specific endpoint, let's say I want to access a user, I'll have to say /user, like that. Okay, I've not created /users, and that is the reason why. That's the reason why you see it this way. But remember, you need to pass your URLs. For example, at this moment, I have /admin. You see this admin? If I go ahead and I say /admin, let me just pass /admin, you'll realize that it will open an admin page. Why? It is because you already have the URL for admin, right? So what I will do here now, first of all, I will have to create a new url.py file inside our task list. So I'll copy this one. Let me just put my charger. Okay. Yes, so I'll now copy the URL that I have here, and then I will paste it inside the task lista app like this, right? So most of the things I don't need like this one, right? And then inside here, I'll just pass an empty like that, and then let me just comment out this like that, right? So after doing that, I'll go back to my backend, and then I will first include our main URLs, which is these URLs that we have in our task list application. So I'll come here and I say path, and then this way. And then inside here, I can just pass an empty bracket like that. And then I'll say include task lista.urls. All right. I can see I have an error. Oh, I needed to add this. Okay, like that. So you pass an empty URL because personally I want our task list application to be the root. So I don't need to pass /something here. But I will still explain this as we proceed to the url.py in task lista like that. So I'll go back to my URLs in task lista like here, and then this is where now you can pass all your URLs. All right. Yes. So for example, the main one I will say empty quotes. I'll just pass an empty quote, of course, and then here is where you pass your function. That is your view. All right. When I say your function, I mean a function. Remember Django uses model view template design pattern in responding to users. So, for example, model, we have this model. Model is the one that is communicating to your database. Right. You have all configuration for your database. We have the view, right? View handles communication between the front end and the model. That is what you need to know. And also we have the template, which is now what the user sees. Yes, for example, this one, what you are seeing now in my page is what we call the template. It's like you are seeing some kind of template. That's the point, all right? Okay, so here you pass your URL. Okay, you can pass it as empty, and then inside here you can pass your function. I call it functional view. All right. Yes. So this way you can pass your functional view. But for now, I don't have any function. All right. So what you need to do at this point, you need to go to where you have, what do you call it? Where you have your views here, and then now um, you can create a view. Okay. When I say a view, I mean you can create a function. All right. So by doing that, I'll just say define, and then I can call it index like that. And then I will not render any HTML. Okay. I will render an HTTP response. Let me just say, first of all, you need to import it. That's first of all from Django.http, import HTTP response. Okay. So I'll say import HTTP response. So you first of all need to import this before rendering anything. So what I actually want to do now, I just want to display something from our browser before we now continue with our REST framework application. So I'll say return HTTP, let me just say HTTP response, and then I can pass anything. So I can say hello world. I can just say that way. Yes, hello world. You are at the task lista index. So by doing this, if I save this and then I will go ahead and refresh my application, you can see it is not showing us anything. So let's check it from this part. Let's check if we have an error. Okay, so we have include is not defined, which is actually talking about, I think, this part, which is include. So I'll just pass a comma here and I say include, right? Yeah, so by doing this, now let's now check another one. So again, remember after creating a view, I was supposed to pass that view function here, right? So I'll come back here and then I'll first import the views. So I'll say from, that is from these, the views, which is here. I'll say from dot import views, right? Like that. So from dot import views, and then now inside the path, which is now the absolute path, which is the root, I will now pass views dot index. Okay, so someone can still pass the name like that, which is unnecessary for me because I don't need to use it. Because I'm using the REST framework, I can say I don't need to use it. So I can even delete this, and then I can say views.index. So we can now check our application if it is still working as we wanted. Okay, so if you can see now, you can see it is now showing us what we actually rendered here. Okay, so this is the index, which is our view. When you go to URLs in our task list application, we pass an absolute path, which is empty string. And then when you go to URLs in the backend, you'll realize that we have we've included our task lista.urls. All right. So remember, our application is actually working, which is our task list application. It is working because we actually added this. Yes, we created our task list application and then we added it here. So without adding here, it will not actually work. You'll always be getting some kind of errors. All right. So after doing this, so now that we have this setup, that means we are actually good to go. I can say that we are actually good to go. The only thing that we need to do is to install some 1, 2, 3 from Django REST framework. All right. Yes. So okay, I was just checking the comments. So I will proceed to where we want to do. So what I will do, I'll go to my home, which is the Django REST framework homepage. All right. And then this is where now I will install anything related with framework, Django REST framework. So remember, we are not creating a full application with Django. If you can remember, somebody can create a full application with Django by just creating templates, creating his models, creating the views, and then you are done. All right. But what I'm doing here, we want to just create a framework, I mean endpoints, our API endpoints, so that anyone can consume those endpoints, right? I mean, any front end framework or maybe a library can access those frameworks. React can do it, okay? You can create it here, and then when you are done, you can now consume with Angular, which is JavaScript framework. You can consume with Vue.js, Next.js, and all that. So we are just trying to simplify. I call it simplify because you don't have to have a lot of code because you don't have templates. That is like a separation of concerns. And also by using the Django REST framework, I mean by using the REST API way to create your application, I can tell you, you can deploy your backend somewhere else, and then you can deploy your front end somewhere else. All right. For example, for this application, let's say you create a full application, task list application, and then you are done. Okay, so you are done only in the backend part. So another person can come and create a front end, which is with React. Another person can create even a mobile application. Remember, we are doing web. But remember, someone can still access these endpoints using when creating an application, maybe by React Native, with React Native or any other um, front end app, like I don't know what is the name of this. Um, Even using the Flutter, right? We also have Flutter, which allows you to create an application. So that's a plus, by the way. Yes. So I'll always recommend you create your backend differently, and then you create your front end. I mean, using maybe something else. By doing that, it will be very easy to manage your application. All right. Yes. So what I want us to do now, we need to install this. So I'll copy this. So if you realize, I have been installing packages using ppnv. All right. I'm saying, let me just click on this. I've been saying pip install this, but ppnv installs this. But remember, you can still use even pip. Okay. If you feel like pip is okay again, you can still say pip install this, or you can say pip env install this. All of them actually works. And as I've said, any package you install, you will find it here. See that? Even Django framework is now here. All right. So after doing that, um, I don't think I need to install anything here. This one are optionals. Let me just zoom in a little bit. These ones are optional, so I just install the framework. And then after installing the framework, remember you need to pass this. All right, REST framework in your installed apps. So I'll go back to my settings where you have installed the apps. And then just below this, I will now add REST framework as other application. All right. So after adding that, again, so I think you also need to add this. But remember, someone might decide to continue with all this. But remember, when it comes to authentication, I want us to use Simple JWT. So what I did, install this, and then add this one to my installed apps in my settings.py. And then I will now copy this. I mean, this REST framework object. So I'll copy this the way it is, and then I will just add anywhere in my settings.py. So I'll just paste it here. So remember, now we have default permission and all this. All right. But remember, these permissions again, All right. I don't want to be read only. If you can check this, I don't want to be read only. So I'll change these permissions to be allow. I'll call it allow any. Yes. So this allow any actually is you can get it if you search from this part. So you can get the permissions in Django framework documentation. Okay. Yes. So having passed that one, I now need to install JWT, which is simple JWT package. All right. So I'll come back to this part, which is this documentation. Okay. And then I will go ahead and install um, the simple JWT. So I'll just copy this command again, pip install Django REST framework, and then let me just zoom in a little bit, and then I will just paste again. I'll paste in my command line, paste. So as you can see, you will see it is now installing JWT, right? Already satisfied. I'm just looking for it. That is ppnv install. Okay, I don't know what did I install. Let me just try again. Let me hide this and then let me paste. Pip install Django REST framework simple JWT. Okay, so probably it has installed. I don't know the reason why it's not showing up here, but it's all right. You can go ahead now and also copy this. See this? So remember here, we have, what do you call it? We have the REST framework here. So if you follow through this one, you'll realize that we also adding this one to the REST framework. So you don't have to copy everything. So you just copy this one alone. As you can see, we have some dots here. So it's actually telling you, after all that you have, now add this. So I'll copy this one and then I'll paste inside here. I'll just pass a comma and then I'll paste it here. Default authentication classes. Okay. I'm just trying to check something that I failed to add. Default authentication classes. Okay, I'll first remove this one. Actually, that was the problem. So now you can see I have default permission classes and then default authentication classes. So by doing this, that means we'll be doing authentication with JWT almost automatically when you set up this one. All right. So so we have all that is you have all the features that you can add, like adding access token expiry date and all that. All that one you can do it by yourself. So what I'm now remained with, first of all, remember you need to add these URLs. You see this? These URLs. After adding this, ensure that you add this in your url.py in your task lister application. All right. So I'll go back to my task list application. Go to URLs here, and then I'll import token obtain pair view and also token refresh view. All right. So what is the role of these two? This one is obtaining the auth token and I mean the auth token and also refresh token, and then this one is only for refresh alone. Okay, so remember when you're dealing with authentication with JWT, I just want to copy this. When you're dealing with authentication with JWT, the moment you log in, you will receive a token. So that token will be like your password. All right. But remember, as a normal user from the front end, the user will not be able to know that this one I've used something like a password. But that URL token, that is, I mean, that token will be used to access any resource that you want to do. That is authorization. You can use it to fetch the current user. You can use it even when you are doing the refresh. You see? So as you can see now, I now have these two paths which are just copied from there. The first one is the token. So for me, I don't think I need API slash like that. Remember, this is my own URL, so I'm the one to decide what I want to do with it. And also, I will remove the API, and then I will have to be token slash refresh. All right? Yes. So after creating this, you are now done configuring that. You also need to now add it to installed apps, which is this one, right? You need to copy this, and then you go to your installed apps, and then you can add it inside here. You can add it anywhere, by the way, but I'll just add it at this point. So now you've added your REST framework application. I've added REST framework application, and then I've added task lister application. All right. So after doing this, you are now ready to now start developing your application. So let me first clear my terminal, and then let me restart my application. Okay. So that means my application is running, right? It is still running the way it was, even after installing all this stuff. All right. Yes. So after doing this, remember, let me just remove the backend URLs. After doing all this, remember these ones can work, but remember we've not created the models, we've not done the migrations, we've not created our views to handle adding the user and all that, and then we also need to add the URLs. So at this moment, you first need to set up your models, right? Yes, models are actually what is communicating with your backend, all right? What is communicating to your database. Remember, we have our DB here, which is actually empty. It has nothing. Okay, it has nothing because we've not created anything. So the models, what we are creating in the models is what is what will be migrated to be the database tables and also the columns in the database. All right. So first of all, you first need to create your user model and also the task model. But remember something here. I did say we'll be doing the custom authentication in Django. All right. So custom authentication is slightly different from the normal one where you just import the user and then you proceed. All right. So remember also having these models. We'll be using the model names when we are doing communication, when we are posting data to our database, when we are fetching data from our database, and all that. All right. Yes. So first of all, what you need to do, we first need to create a user model. We have a user model, and also we also need to have a task model, right? We need these two, right? But remember again, these two should have a relationship, all right? Yes, remember a user should be related to a task because we want a user to, an individual user to add his own his own task and also to fetch his own tasks, all right? So I create a user alone and then I create a task model and then I link it to the user. All right. So before doing all that, we first need to customize. I can say you want to customize authentication before even creating the user model and the task model. All right. So for us to do that, we first need to create a class. Class, I call it user manager. Manager, right? You create this class, which is inheriting from the actual base user manager, right? I'll say base user manager that way. And remember again, this base user manager we are importing here. Ignore the automatic imports, of course. All right, don't worry about that. I'll explain this. Base user manager, you need to import it from the models, all right? So I'll say from Django dot contrib dot auth dot models. The way that I have this way, import abstract base user, which we'll be using that one, and then we need to have base user manager. So this one we are importing the base user manager. All right, this one will enable us to customize our authentication. All right, yes, and then we have this one, which is a function which will override. All right, this one will override the function, which is the function for creating the user, which is the inbuilt that comes with the Django. All right. So this one, all this, Control Z. So this one will check if we have the email, and then we have all this. Okay. But remember, actually, this one actually messed up with actually what I was to add. So I also need to add the email. Okay. I mean, not email, I mean username, because the user, when he's registering, we need to pass email, username, and then password. All right. So for the password, you can decide to pass none, and then you can check if not email. Okay. And then again, you can also add another one, which is for checking the username. So the fact is that we are customizing this. The moment you create one, right? Let's say you create one like this, you will not need to change it again. Like for example, if you create an application using the custom, you'll be just replicating the same code. So you don't need to cram all this. All right. Yeah. So I'll say if not email, and then the second one, if not username. So we are checking if you don't have username, give an error that username. All right. Sorry for that. Users must have a username like this. So passing this, username must have a username, users must have a username, users must have an email if they, in case the user does not pass this. And then we have this part where we are actually passing the user. Okay. So we are checking the model, which is where we are. And then we say the email.self.normalize email. Okay. So after normalizing this email, of which this is not actually what I want to do. I just want to pass first the username and then the email. All right. So I'll come and say username. Then I'll say is equals to username. Right. I'll remove this one. Username is equals to username like that. And then now it will continue with email is equals to self.normalize. All right. And then we have user.set password. That one is okay. And then we have set super user, which is this way. All right. But now remember, you need to pass username. Right. Yes, you need to pass username. And then here again, you need to pass username again, like that. Yes, so we have username and all this, username, password, email, username, password, and then this one is okay. What else did I fail to add? I think this one is almost okay. That one is okay. And then we have user.isadmin. That one is okay. This one is actually for creating an admin. Okay. If you don't want to play along with the user model. So that one is okay. Is admin. Okay, I think this one now we are good to go. We can now go ahead and create our models. So this one, the moment you create like this, you'll be replicating in all your applications. You don't have to worry about cramming and not even understanding, because some of this is not. The more you use it, is the more you get to understand it. All right. So now that I have all this, I can now go ahead and create a user model. All right. So I'll say class user. I want now to create a user model. Okay. And then I pass the abstract base user, which is this one, which is imported, which you are now overriding the user model again. And then you can now pass all your fields, all your columns, right? So as this one is like giving me some kind of automated fields, I'll accept majority of them, okay? But I'll remove all this, like this one. So what I just need, I need these fields. I need an email column in my database. I need my date joined column in my database. That is the day you joined. Maybe you created your account. We need to have the last login, the is admin. Are you an admin? Which is a Boolean field, right? We have is active. If you are active in our system, which is default, which is true, the moment you create your account, we are allowing you to be active. And also we have his staff and also his super user. So there's something that we fail to add, that we need to add actually, which is password. All right. Remember, you need to add password. So that one is a must. So I'll say I'll pass password. And password is character field. So I'll say models dot character field. And then the maximum password you are allowed to enter is 128 characters. That one is a lot. And then I think this one is okay. So we have our user model ready. All right. So after creating your user model, we now want to add our tasking model. All right. I'll say class task. Okay. And then you now pass models. You now pass models.model. All right. The reason why I'm saying model is because the reason why I'm not passing the abstract this user is this one was actually overriding the user that is coming with Django, right? But this one is a normal model. That's why I'm saying models.model. And then inside it, I will pass title. I pass the model.char field. Of course, it is a character field. When you pass a character field, you pass a maximum length. When I say character field, I mean it allows you to enter A, B, C, D, and all that. All right, A, B, C, D, mixture of characters and numbers and all that. Text field is allowing you to enter a lot of characters. I mean a lot of words. That is description, which is like a text field. You can add paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. Because we are dealing with a task, you can pass a small title, but remember when it comes to description, you need to pass, you are passing a very large description. We also have completed. Of course, when you're dealing with a task, it's either completed, you'll either have to add it to make it completed or incomplete. So I added it is complete. This one will be true or false. Okay, is it completed? No. So by default, it is incomplete because the moment you create a task, of course, you cannot create it and make it complete. All right. And then we have created. Okay. So this one is created at actually. It should be created at, meaning that task was created at this time. All right. And then we have the user. Okay. So remember, this user is very important. This user field is very important. The reason why it is very important is because you need to pass, you need to connect it with, is because you actually need to make it to connect it to your user for you to be able to assign a user to a specific task. Okay. So remember, when dealing with tasks, task should belong to a specific user, right? Okay. A user should create his or her own task, and a task should belong to a specific user. So in short, a user can have many or multiple tasks. All right. A user can have multiple tasks, but a task that you have in your database, that single task should belong to a specific user. All right. So what we did here is a relationship of one to many, which means a user table as a user has many tasks. That's the point. All right. So I'll just remove this one, and then I leave it at this point. So that means now my models are very ready. Okay. So now that I have my models, what you need to do is to convert these models, all right, these two models, to now to make it a database tables. All right. So how can you do that? We are doing it with what we call migration. All right. As the name suggests, let me just check the question. Say we have the teacher, student, staff, admin as our users. Can they be on the same table with different designation? Yes, Simon. Yes, actually, you can have one table for users, but for example, for you, you have teachers, students, staff, and admin. So for me here, you can see we have is admin here. You see this is admin. I can even remove the is super user like that. So is admin will handle is admin. So what you will do when you are creating an admin, you need to pass the admin to be true. All right. If it is talking about a teacher, you will have to pass another field, another column, which is um, for handling a teacher. So you can say is teacher like this. You can say is teacher like that. Is teacher like that. What else can you have? You can have is teacher, is student, is staff. We already have as is staff is here. You can only add now the last one, which is what is teacher is student. All right. So I'll remove this one and then I'll say is student. You will use the same table. The only difference is when you are trying to do something. When a user is trying to do something, is when you can filter out. Is this user a student? If he is a student, give him some privileges. If the person who has logged in is a principal, give him his own privileges. If it's a staff, give him his own privileges. All right. So I will show you some sample of this, maybe later on. Okay, so now that I have this, I now want to convert it to database tables. Okay, so I'll come here, and then I will now do what we call migrations. Let me clear here. Yes, so we have a command which we call python3 manage.py. If you can realize python3 manage.py is constant, and then now you can pass the command. So I'll say python3 manage.py, and then I'll say make migrations. Okay, so it will generate what we call migration files here. If you can check here, you have nothing. So it will generate the migration file, and then now you can migrate it, right? So as you can see, it has generated 2 migrations, right? So when I go to migration initial here, you'll see we have these 2. We have the user, and then we have the task. So we are ready now to migrate. So you cannot do migration before creating the migrations, all right? So that's why you make the migrations first, and then you can now proceed and do what we call, and then you migrate it, right? Yes, so it will generate a lot of tables. Most of them comes with Django. So when you go and check here, let me refresh, let me open. I want to open to with yes. So you can see now we have all these tables. But for me, I don't have any interest with all these tables. I'm only interested in user and the task, which is these 2. Task lister user, which is the task lister means the user, and then this one is the table. So task lister task, and then task lister user. I'm only interested in these 2. All right. Yes. Somebody will ask me which kind of view am I using. Okay. Remember, when you can see my screen, you'll realize that I'm using. Let me just zoom in to Django. I'm using what we call SQLite viewer for me to be able to see these tables. All right. That is an extension, which is what we call SQLite. All right. SQLite viewer. This one. So just click on it and then you install it, and then it will automatically allow you to view your database. All right. And then also you install this SQLite. Okay. You install this one before this one, and then all is well. These 2. All right. Okay. Now that I have my tables ready, all right, I now need to go to views, and then I can now start creating users and all that. But remember, you need to first create what we call serializer. All right. A serializer, we call it serializer. It allows you to convert data to JSON format. All right. Yes. So having serializers is very, very important. All right. But sometimes some people might not need them because they can still convert it directly when they are dealing with the views.py. All right. Yes. So so I just want to check we are still together. Okay. Okay. So let me just proceed with this. So first of all, there's something that I forgot to add in our settings.py. Okay, remember our Django application at this moment is like having is like thinking that we are not using the custom authentication, right? It is like we are not doing the custom authentication. That is why you need to direct it that that there is this app and there is this model that we are using in our authentication. So you go to your settings, and then anywhere you feel like you can add, I can add it here, and then we call it auth user model, like this. So by doing this, you are telling our application that the authentication model, that is a model that allows you to log in and do all that, um, is the user model, which is task list application, which is the user model. All right. If your model was users, you could have said tasklister.users. All right. If your application, which is for our side is tasklister, if your application was even Paul, you could have said Paul.user. All right. That means your application name and then the model name, which is now this user. All right. So this is just by redirecting our application to use this model for our authentication. All right. So let me remove now the settings. I'm good with settings. Yes. So now I now want to go to serializers. So as I've said, serializers allows you convert data to JSON format. Maybe we use it to format our data most of the time. You fetch data, you use serializers to format your data, but somebody might not need it. And that's why sometimes I might not need it. I can just decide to use to convert just to JSON directly and all that. All right. Okay. Yes, I wished I could ask, are we still on the same page and all that? All right. You can just type on the chat maybe that we are still on the same page, and then we can now proceed to creating serializers and the rest. Right? Yes, you can type anything in the chat maybe, and then I will see. If you have any question, you can still shoot it up in the chat. Just the way Simon is here. Okay, thank you very much, Jackton, Simon, and the rest that I'll be expecting your response. Okay, so now that we have our models, we have user model. Remember, this one is not a model, by the way, right? This is just a way to override the authentication. So that one is not a model. This one is a model, and then this one is a model. So I have two models. So I will create a serializer here. Serializer, you can say serializers.py because you have multiple, right? Yes, so inside the serializers, first of all, you need to import your models. Remember, the number of serializers that you can have should be the same as the number of models that you have, right? Yes. So I'll go back to my serializer, and from this part, this is where now I will import my model first. So I'll say from .models import task, then comma user. So I'll import the two first, and then after importing it, I will now import the serializers package from the REST framework. Okay, so from REST framework, import serializers. Okay, like that. So remember this serializer stuff, you can get all these in this part, in this Django REST framework. You can search for them and then serializers, and then you can get all of them here. You can explore anything to do with serializers and the rest. All right. So I'll come back here, and then this is where now I can create my serializers. So I'll say class. So you can have any name, you can pass any name that you feel like you can pass. All right. So for me, I'll pass it as task serializer. All right. And then of course you need to pass it as an argument here. not as an argument, as a parameter here, which is serializers dot model serializer, right? And then here, inside here, you can pass now the class, which is meta, and then you pass your model, and then you pass the fields. So for me, the um, task model, I don't need to limit anything. I just need the title, description, models, created at, or which created at is not something that I'm expecting from the user. And then I need the user who is currently logged in. Okay. Yes. So I'll go back to my serializer. And then I think I'm done with this. But remember, when you are dealing with a serializer, you need to check that in this serializer, we have a user here. See this user? Yes. So anytime you are fetching a task, you need to actually fetch a task maybe with the owner of the task. All right. You can fetch the user, the task, and the owner of the task as an admin. All right. But the normal user can fetch his own task. All right. So I'll go back to my serializers.py. Let me first create a user serializer. Okay. Class meta and all this. But for me, remember the user serializer should be written careful, all right? So that the user should not be receiving passwords and all those unnecessary things that they should not be allowed to access, all right? So first of all, you can now pass the user, which is model. But now when it comes to the fields, you don't pass all of them. Okay, I just want to pass, let me just pass an ID. I just want to pass an ID here. Username, those are the things that I want the user to have access to. Let me just pass all of them and then I remove some. All right. For me, for now, I don't need his teacher, his student, I don't need it for now. Is active, I don't need it for now. Is staff, I don't also need it. Even is admin, I don't need this. I think I can just be remained with is admin, maybe, and also death joined, and then I don't need the last login maybe for now at this moment. Yes. I think this one are now enough for application. So we just need username, email, is admin. Oh, we forgot to also pass password, but ask yourself, is password allowed for the user? Yes, it is allowed. But remember, it should not be visible. When you fetch a user, the password should not actually be allowed, should not be visible to the user. So that's why we have a common feature known as extra quirks this way. This one will pass some extra arguments. Okay, this one means extra arguments known as password, which means password should only be write only. Right? Password should be write only. It should not be fetch. Should not be read by the users. All right. Yes. So after doing this, our serializer now is very ready. The only thing that you need to add is in the task serializer. What do we need to add in our task serializer? We need to add the user serializer here, so that when you are fetching a task, it should fetch the task plus the user who created the task. All right. So for example, I'll come and do user. So remember this user that I'm passing here, user is equal to, this user that I'm passing here is the user that I passed here. You see this? Yes. So even if I decide to pass user xxx, you come here, when you come to this part, you need to say user xxx. Very important, right? Very, very important. So just to note that this user kind of variable is not something that is coming from nowhere. That's the point. So Control Z, I'll Control Z that one. Come back here. I'll say user, and then I'll say user is equal to, and then I'll say user serializer. By doing this, it will fetch the task itself and the users the user who actually created that task. But there's something that you also need to note this. The moment you pass a user serializer this way, I'll pass required here. to be equal to false. Why am I passing is equal to false? Because you are not passing the user from the front end part of it. This one is just an operation that's happening from the backend. So the only thing that I need from the user is this fields, the title, description, completed. These three. The rest, this one will be automatically created. The user will also play around when you are trying to insert a task. All right. Yes, so after creating the serializers, we are now ready to go to our views, right? Yes, so remember we have only one view. And remember, any view you create, you need to attach it to the URL here, okay? Yes, so this one is home, will be no slash, nothing. This one will be token slash, token, and then this one will be token slash refresh slash something. This one is the URL for refresh, this one is for token, and then this one is an empty. This one is a root for the index, which is this view. So now we need to create other views, right? We need to create other views. That is for adding a user first. Remember, you cannot log in. As I told you, you can now log in, but now remember, we don't have any user in our database. All right. If you try to go and try to log in, it will give you no active user without without credentials. So let me show you that first. I'll be using Thunder Client in testing my endpoints. Yes, I'll be using my Thunder Client in testing my endpoints. Someone can use what we call Postman. Yes. So inside here, I'll just create a new collection. So again, Thunder Client, for someone new in Thunder Client again, Thunder Client is an extension that is downloaded from the extensions marketplace of VS Code. Okay, so when I say Thunder Client here, you will see we have Thunder Client. You just install it, and then you are good to go. The moment you install it, it will just append itself here, and then you can now start using it. When I click on this, you can now start playing around. So when you open it for the first time, it will not be having anything like this. So you can start by creating a new collection. So when I say a new collection again, it's like creating a folder for your app. It's like creating a folder to hold all your endpoints. All right. So I'll call it backend because we are dealing with this backend application. And then inside here now is when you can start creating your excuse. You can now start creating your requests. Yes. So for us to test the token, remember this token, this endpoint, which is token slash, is actually for logging in. So I'll just create a new request here. And then I'll call this request, the name, I'll just pass a request, maybe I'll call it login, like that, and then press enter. So in this login, you need to pass the URL here, and then you need to pass what we call a method, all right? So when dealing with APIs, we have what we call methods. Get, post, put, delete, or somebody can say path or anything. We have patch, we have all this rest, and the rest of this. So get is when you want to get something from the backend. That is from the backend. Then we have post. When you want to log in, when you want to add something to the database and all that, we use post because you are posting data. You are passing data from the front end to the backend. So that's what we call post. We have put, and then we have patch. They are almost close to the same, to being performing the same work, but patch will update some parts. If you want to update a user, if you use patch, it will update. If you are updating a user and then you want to only update username alone, you can use patch because you are updating username alone. But if you are updating everything in your user, you use put. Right? And then we have the delete. Delete is basically straightforward for deleting data from the backend. All right. Yes. So now that I want to test this, I will go and copy the URL. I can see here it is giving me some kind of error. Let me restart my server again. Yes, the moment you add something, and remember, personally, I have what you call autosave. We call it autosave. Anytime you can write two words and then it autosaves. So it autosaves and then that's why it is giving you that error, but it is not persisting. You just save it and then you restart your server. So my interest is this URL. So this one is the root URL. Okay. So when I paste this root URL and I just send it the way it is, you'll realize that it is showing us hello world, you are at the task lister index. It is showing us this. See this? It is showing us this one, right? It is because I did pass get. If I try to use post, you'll realize that it is giving me an error, which is for three forbidden, because I don't have um, that URL. I mean that endpoint, right? So for me, I'm now interested in first of all, I'm interested in trying to add to login so that you can see how the functionality of login is working. So as I said, the login is this path, which is token /. So I'll say /token/ that way, and then when I try to log in, it will give me an error. Email, password. These are what is required. All right. So again, in the Thunder client, we have the headers, we have the auth, and then we have the body. Auth is for when you're fetching data that requires authentication, and then you have the body. Body is when you want to pass data to the backend. So for me, I want to pass username and email and password. Okay. Okay. So I'll go back to my form. I'll click on this form. Somebody can still pass JSON, but I like using this form. So inside here, I'll say email, and then I pass password. Email, I can say kelvin@gmail.com, right? And then you can pass your password. I'll now say Kelvin. But now remember, we've not created this user in the backend. So when I send this, it will give you an error. It will tell you no active account found with the given credentials. The reason is because we have nothing in our database. All right. Our user our user table is empty. All right. So what we now need to focus on is to create a view, which is a function inside this view that will handle the registration of the user. All right. So I'll just come below this. I'll just create a function. I'll call it register user. Okay. Right. And then I pass my request like that. Yes. So remember this way, you always need to pass what you call CSRF, right? To prevent what we call injection, right? SQL injection. So I'll say CSRF, and then I'll say exempt. This way, exempt. That way, right? But remember this CSRF again should be imported, right? So I'll say from Django dot views dot decorators dot CSRF import CSRF exempt like this. Okay, so this one actually will import the CSRF and exempt. This one will prevent your application, will prevent SQL injection in your application when you're trying to post the data from the front end. All right. So now that we have done, we've created a function. So inside this function, first of all, what we need to do here, you need to actually get data from the user. So what you need to do first, you need to check if the data from the front end, if you have the username, not the username, actually the username. If you have the username, email, and password, you need to first check if you have them, right? So first of all, what I need to do is to get the data from the front end. So I'll say data is equals to request. Okay. So what am I doing here? What I'm doing here is I'm initializing a variable known as data with the data that is coming from the front end. Okay, so after getting this, I will create three variables. I'll create username equals to, so I need three things: data.get username, okay, uh, data.get username, and then I also need email, email data.get email, that is this data, and then I'll pass another one, which is password, which is data.get password. So remember, after getting this from the front end, you now remember somebody can pass an empty string from the front end. Somebody can pass an empty username, somebody can pass an empty email, and somebody can pass password. And if you are not careful, there will be a lot of empty spaces in your database. So you first need to have some kind of data validation first before passing data to your backend. So what I will do, I'll create two variables um, to handle that. Okay, one, you can handle first username to check if the username is empty, or you also have an easy way to do that. You can decide to first check if the username exists in our database, because remember, when you're trying to create an account, even when using this Facebook, all these Facebook, Twitter, and all that, when you try to add a username, you'll get an error that the username exists. When you try to pass an email that is already exists, it will give an error. So we can check it in that point of view. All right. So I'll create two variables. I'll call one of them email exist. I can call it email count, because this one I'll just count the number of users with the same email. Okay. And then I'll pass username count. It will count the number of users with the same username. All right. Yes. So after doing this, so remember, this one will count. Okay, so you can say now, you come and say, if email count is greater than 0, that means that email exists in our database. Okay, now pass a response. So what will I do? I will say return. I will not return an HTTP response. I will return a response. But remember again, this response you need to import again. Okay, so I'll say from Django, you need to remove. Remember, I have imported a response here. I mean, an HTTP response. But now I want to import um, a response alone. All right. So that one is coming from Django framework. So I'll say from REST framework dot response import response. So I'll come back here. Let me check again if you guys are still with me. Oh, sorry for that. Will the JSON be displayed in the browser? Yes, the JSON will be displayed in the browser, but now it will not be displayed to the user, because you need to format it well. You need to have a good front end for the user to have that JSON data, right? That is for will the JSON be displayed. What is the purpose of class method? Okay. Yes, so this is some kind of extra kind of data, right? That is coming to the user serializer, right? So these data are very important. This data that you have here, that is the model, the user, and all this. Yeah, so it's some kind of extra kind of data for the serializer. Yes, that is for Solomon. Yes, that's the purpose of it. Its purpose is to set the model and then the fields related to that serializer, right? So remember, when you are dealing with a model known as task, that model has its own fields, right? So you also need to pass the fields. So it carries some extra data. I can call it data related to the model, right? Yes, that is for Solomon. Thank you. Okay, so if you have a question again, shoot your question, and then yes, if you are lost again, you can still ask your question. All right, so let's continue with the views. So I was importing the response. I did import the response here. So now that we have the response, So you can now pass the response. But remember the response that I'm passing myself, this one is an error kind of response because you are trying to tell to pass an error to the front end that the email that you're trying to create is already in existence. All right. Yes. So I'll just come inside here, and then I'll say error, and then which is an object by the way, and then you say email already exists. All right. Same will happen to the username. If username.count is greater than 0, go ahead and give an error to the user that username already exists. Otherwise, okay, otherwise now you can proceed and create the user. All right. So I can go ahead and do the creation this way, or you can proceed and use the serializer way. So either way works. You can use this one, or you can use the serializer way. If you decide to use the serializer way, I'll just come back here, and then now I can now start working with the serializer. So first of all, I'll start with the serializer. I've not imported any serializer, so you cannot use it if you've not imported it. So I'll say from .serializers import user serializer, right? So now I'm trying to use the serializer. So data is equals to data, so which is this data that I created here. This data is the one that is coming with the serializer, user serializer, but the next one is a variable that I created here, all right? Yes, so after doing this, you come below it, you first check if the serializer is valid. Maybe they sort of some kind of error that you are getting. So you first check if you have an error. Okay. So I will say if serializer first is valid, actually I will check if it is okay. I'll go ahead and save the user. Right? Otherwise, go ahead and give the errors. All right. So for this response, I don't want to pass the serialized serialized data. I don't want to tell the user to pass the same data that the user was passing to me, to him, or to her. So what I will do, I'll just pass a reasonable kind of message, which is some kind of success message. I'll just call it success. See that? Which is this way. So you pass a message that the user has been created successfully. So now I'm good to go, but I don't think there's any other thing. The only thing that I need to add is the method that is used by this method, by this function. Remember, when you're trying to add data, you need to add data using, we are using post, all right? So you need to pass what we call a decorator known as an API view, like this, and then I pass post. See this? Yes, I pass post like this, and then you are good to go, right? Yes, so, but remember again, you need to import the API view because it is also some kind of decorator from REST framework. So I'll come here and say from REST framework, with decorators like that, import API view, right? So remember again, when you're dealing with the user, you'll also need to import the user model for you to be able to fetch the user, and also when dealing with the tasks. So let me first restart and try again. But remember, after creating this method, which is register, I mean register function, you need to link it to a URL. All right. So that's where you can come here and say path, and then you can say register, and then views.register user. All right. So this one is for adding a user to the database. Okay. So I'll now go back to my data client. I will duplicate this, and then I will rename it. I'll call it register user. And then after registering the user, then you also need to pass it as post, and then you need to pass the URL. Remember, this URL is what we just created, which is this one. which is register /. So I'll just paste in front of this, and then I'm good to go. But remember, in these fields, remember we are required to pass email, password, email, password, and what? Email, password, and username. That's a must. But again, there's something that we need to also check in our function. All right. If you can check, oh, let me just remove this. This is just another application. If your function, you are dealing with creating a user, let me just remove this, by the way. Yes. If you are dealing with registering a user, you need to be careful when inserting data to the database. All right. First of all, because remember the email, I mean, not the email, I mean, the password should actually be encrypted. So that is why I need to be careful when passing, when trying to save. So inside here, where we are doing the save, I don't think I even need this user variable. Inside here, I will pass the data individually. Why am I doing that? Because I want to encrypt the password. The password should not be seen exactly as you entered. All right. So I'll say username, and then password. So in the password, you need to encrypt it. How can you encrypt it? All right. We have a function that is coming with Django known as make password. So I'll import it first. I'll say from REST framework, REST framework underscore framework, and then no, this one is not imported actually from the REST framework. This one actually should be from Django. Yes, so from Django auth, okay, from Django auth, models import, okay, auth, not models, it should be ash, actually, ash, which is ashes actually. You need to import what you call make password. Yes. So you import this make password. So this one will hash your password. It will be encrypted in such a way that somebody cannot understand it. So inside here, while you are passing your password, you need to say make password, and then you pass now your password inside. Like this. So by doing this now, it will now be your password that you'll be passing from your front end here, which is the client at this moment, will be encrypted. And then in the last field, I need to pass password, and then I'll pass username. With this username, I can say KK, like something like that. And then let me try to send it. So that means my server is not running. If you get an error like that, that means there was an error somewhere. So I will now restart my server, which is Django manage.py, Python manage.py run server. And then I will now do it again. I think I can see, I have some error somewhere. I can see it. It should be Django here. Should be views. It is actually here, and it should be Django here, which is the decorators here. Sorry for that. So let me now register again. As you can see, the user has been registered successfully. If I try to send the same information, you will get email already exists. All right? Yes, it is because you are trying to send the data to the backend, which is already in the backend. All right? If you try to pass an empty email, all right, it will give you username already exists. All right? So I was just trying to confirm the username validation. All right. So I'll now go back to my database, which is my db.sqlite. Open it, and then let's check if we have that user. Let me refresh, and then let's check. It is not auth user. It should be tasklista.user. This one. Yes, as you can see now, we have an email. We have an ID of one, an email, which is my email, my username, the date I joined, which is right now. It is giving me a non-Kenyan, non-East African date format, that is 1251. It is still 1251. And then we have the last login is admin, which is all of these are zeros. Is active is 1. And then we have the password. If you can check my password here, it is encrypted. You can understand that I entered KK several times because I used the make password function that is coming with the Django. All right. So now that you have a user in the database, if you try to log in now, that is Kelvin at Gmail, I did pass a password of Kelvin. If I try to send this, it will give me what we call access token and refresh token. As it is shown here, you see this token, we get token view, the pair, which is refresh and the other one. But mostly the refresh, we use it to avoid user being logged out, right? Yes, but for this access is what we are using most of the time when trying to add something to the database, when trying to fetch something from the database and all that. All right. Yes. Now that we've logged in successfully. Okay. All right. So I'll assume that we are still on the same page, unless someone has a question. All right. You can shoot it in the chat. Now that we have this token, remember this access token is very important when we are dealing now at this point, and when we are dealing with what do you call it? When we are dealing with other front-end frameworks. All right. Yes, it is very important. This access token is very important. All of them are important, but access is what we are using to authorize the user to do something. But remember what we've done now. We've authenticated the user. We've authenticated the user successfully. We now want to authorize the user to do something. All right. Yes. So because of time, I will rush very fast in creating a view for adding a task. All right. Yes, I've logged in successfully, so we are now good to go. So so I'll proceed in now creating the task. All right. So we also need to create a task, and then we will be good to go. All right. Yes. So so what I will do, I will now come below here. I'll create a function. I'll say I define I'll say add task. I can call it any name. Remember, you can pass any name. I can say add task. You pass the request inside. And then inside here, you can now pass the same way that we were doing when adding a user, right? It is actually the exact thing. The only difference is that we are not validating the title and description, right? We can just validate to check that it is there, but we are not checking for duplicates, right? So I'll start with the data. It's equals to request the data. That's one, and then we can initialize also our serializer at this point. Like that, we pass our serializer, and then we pass our data here. All right. Yes. So you can validate, but it is not actually a must, because when you check your serializer, these serializers by default, it will validate what the user is entering. So if you enter an empty stuff, an empty field, it will give you an error. So I might not need to check the title if it is there or description. I'll just go ahead and add it. All right. So I'll first check if it is valid. Okay. So I'll say if serializer dot is valid. If it is valid, go ahead and save. Right. But inside the save, I will need to pass actually the data that I want to save. So I'll say title, which is equal to title. Okay. Description is equal to description. What else? User. Yes. So here, when you're dealing with the user, you need to be careful. Okay. So remember, you need to add the user who is currently logged in. That is why we are passing a value known as request.user. Right? We are passing request.user. So that means when you're trying to add this, when you're trying to add what do you call it? this task, you need to pass the token, okay? The access token that you received when you logged in for you to be able to add a task. The reason is because we don't want to have anonymous users who are creating the task. We want to link a task to a specific user. So to get the logged in user, we use what we call request.user in Django. All right? Yes. So after doing this, I don't want to return the serialized data. I just want to pass a success message. Success, like that. Task created successfully. But now, else, what if the serializer is not valid? You need to pass an else statement, and then enter, and then I will return response. I can even return serializer.errors. That one makes sense. This one is okay. So at this moment, I'm good to go. But remember, this function is still open. Where is it? Where is this function? This one. This function is still open. A user can do anything to this function. So first of all, you need to pass the CSRF exempt, and then you pass the API view, that which is post, and then there's something that you need to pass again, which is what we call permission classes. All right. So permission classes is very important. You also need to import it. This one will ensure that the user who is not logged in should not access this function. All right. So I'll say from REST. Sorry for that. I need to pass it here. I'll say from REST framework. The permissions import is authenticated. All right. Import is authenticated. So it ensures that only the logged in user should access this function, which is adding the task. All right. So I'll just pass this at permission classes, and then I'll say is authenticated. Perfect. But now I don't think I've not imported the permission classes. So you also need to import permission classes. All right. Yeah. So all this is from a package, which is import permission classes. Here it is. Is from REST framework. All these packages. Right. Okay. So after doing this, I also need just give me some 6 minutes, and then I'll be done. Sorry for the long session. I just want to finish up by ensuring that the user is already authenticated. All right. So what I will do now, yes, I think now I'm ready to go. The only thing that I need to do now is to go to my URLs and create a URL to handle the add task. All right. So I'll say path. I can say task this way. So I can call it add task like this. Add task and then views.add task. So I'll just copy this the way it is. I will go to my Thunder client, and then I will go to even this login. I'll duplicate it, and then I will rename it again. I will call it add task. Yeah. Okay, add task. And then inside this one, the URL should be add task like this, and then you need to pass your data, which is title. Title can be post like that, and then I need to pass a description. I'll call it learning auth. This learning auth like that. And then what else do we need? We need title, description. What else? Let me go and check. We need title, description is completed, is by default. I don't want to touch that one. The user is there in the backend. So I just need to add title, title and description alone. So I'll just go ahead, and then I think I'm good to go. Let me try now to add it. So if you try to add it, you will get an error here. That means you need to be logged in to be able to create a task. All right. So that is where now authorization comes in, right? Yes, so I need to be known for me to create a task. So I will go and log in again, and then I will copy this token, which is in access, the access one, which is this one, which we call it access token, which is this long text. And then I'll come to add task. I will go to where we have auth. I'll go to BRA, which is this part, and then I'll pass my token here. So by doing this now, you are passing a token. It's like a password for me to be allowed to create a task. So when I try now to create a task, you will get now, you can see I'm now getting a different error, right? So I'm just getting a task serializer error, which is which is a little bit straightforward. I'll come and say from serializers, I'll come and say task serializer, right? So I'll now go ahead and add a task. So let's try again. Title is not defined. So let me check from my body here. Title and then description. Title and then description. Okay. Title. Title is not defined. I've used .py line 56. So that's line 56, which is this part. Title. Oh, okay. Sorry for that. I failed to create them here. I should have said title initialized to a variable. So I'll say data.get title, and then I'll say description data.get description. I think now I'm good to go. So let me now try to add a task. All right. As you can see now, it is telling me task created successfully. If you go to auth and you remove this token and you try to send it, you will get authentication credentials were not provided. All right. But when I bring it back and I try again to send it, you will see success, task created successfully. All right. So that means we've authenticated the user by logging in, and then we've used the authenticated token to authorize the user to create a task. But if you don't want to restrict the user from creating a task, anyone can create it. What you need to do, you remove this, and then when you go to your function here, you need to remove this line, which is authenticated. And also, you can also remove this user is equals to request.user, which also you need to remove it from the models, right? But for now, we were focusing on authorization. So I think we are good to go, all right? Yes, unless someone asks a question. I will stop at this point because of time. But for now, we've created a custom authentication. We've logged in. We created a user. We've logged in, and then we've now authorized the user to add a task. All right. All right. So I think that's all for today. If there's no question, or if is there anyone with a question at this moment? All right. So if there's no question, I'll stop at this point. I will share the repo link of this, and then you can go ahead and try on your side. You can add many tasks. You can try also to fetch all the tasks and all that. All right. Okay. I think that's all for today. I will stop at this point. Stella.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Kevin, so much for the session. It was a very engaging session. I was following through. I hope you saw the questions. I think that one was a bit. I think, but I saw you going through them. So yeah, you saw them, right?
Yes. I went
Okay,
through
great.
these questions. Yes.
Yeah, because I remember I saw you doing that. Okay. So, guys, Kevin's LinkedIn link is in the description. We are also going to share it. Of course, the good thing is that this recording is on YouTube. So, in case you need to revisit this information, you're able to do so in case you needed to share it with somebody who is maybe having an issue in this particular topic. You can be able to do it. You have received a feedback, amazing session. Yes, give him feedback. We'll also share a feedback form for you to share. So genuinely fill it in, because all the speakers, without being paid, they have accepted to come and share their knowledge with you and prepare and make sure that they are able to articulate themselves properly and share the correct thing. So let us not take it for granted. Let us give them their flowers and appreciate them when we can. And also, we appreciate you for making time to join into the session and for being an active audience, and for engaging the speaker as well. So, tomorrow, we are going to be looking at database design and development. And we are in the afternoon, we're also going to be looking at authorization and authentication in Laravel. So now you have done Django. So how does it look in Laravel? I think it's important that we see, and it gives you an opportunity to know, okay, before I make a decision that I want to do this in Django, let me look Laravel. And even if you decide to do both of them, there's nothing wrong with that. How do you go about it? So we will meet tomorrow. The links will be shared on your email and in the WhatsApp group. If you're not in the WhatsApp group, check your email. We have sent the link to the WhatsApp group, and we will continue sending it so that you can join and we can just be in one place where we easily communicate and interact with each other. So I wish you a nice evening. Thank you, Kevin, once again for the amazing session and for the great work you have done, and for the time that you took in, not just in sharing, but also in preparing. So take care, everyone. Have a nice evening. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.